Hey guys, it's me again with Slayer What Ifs. I just finished another Mass Effect part. Where I last left off on the what if Bell was a dragonborn, what if? See, checking. He killed Alduin, killed another dragon. They drove the cultists off after that, or the cultists retreated. He went across the ocean after being told by Akatosh there's something weird going on over there, mate. As then he went to look over there. Apparently, the Dragon Code has formed a new religion around this dragon, who is being uplifted as a god somewhat. As then Bell tried to 1v1 a dragon that had been known to destroy two familias so badly that they crumbled after two other familias pretty much jumped on them at the same time. AKA, this is from the manga, which is Loki and the Freya familia. In the manga, if I remember, essentially after Zeus and the Aphrodite familia tried to kill the last great monster, their familias did. The familias were crippled, and then Freya and Loki teamed up together to just pretty much smash them completely, and then Zeus and Aphrodite were just left the city. Zeus went out to the farms and surprise, surprise, is Belle's grandfather, blah, blah, blah. Spoiler alert. And Aphrodite, she's just nowhere to be... is nowhere to be found. Deku fought him. Not Deku, Bell fought him. Bell got utterly destroyed and was only able to survive thanks to Turn Ethereal with the shouts, as a dragon made a vow to tear down the gods of Aurario and the 8 divines, claiming himself to be the superior dragon. As Bell washed up on a little on the riverside, he got up, started walking, and collapsed in the middle of a town, or the village. As essentially the person that is Zeus, or Belle's grandfather, in the anime, literally had the men pick him up and put him in there. As Belle is being taken care of by, the healers of the village. As he's his bones are broken from the looks of it. It seems like he was fighting something very bad. Is he a adventurer of some kind? I don't know. As they flip him on his back and used, I don't know what they used to, summon Belle's thing in the original when, Ishtar is, checking his stats. But I'll say that they can they have something they'll allow to... Sorry. As they look at it, they drop it on his back, but it just rolls down his back. He is not an adventurer, yet he wields such mighty gear. To have such injuries and stay alive is truly amazing to them. Amazing to the people of that land, since they've never really seen people be strong enough to withstand injuries like this and not die. As he was healed up, he asked them where he was. As you're in the village of insert village name here. As then he gets the explanation, he's I wasn't strong enough. As he falls to one knee, he's I need... Where's my sword? As he's feeling around. As you did not have a sword, sir. You only had a sheath. And your armor is, as they look over in the corner, destroyed. As he's hand me it. As he stands back up and walks over to it, he's straps the remnants of the armor back to himself. As he's I need a place. As then he as he goes off to be by himself, as he sits on top of a hill and meditates, listening for the voice of Akatosh or someone, as Akatosh speaks with Bell, saying, "Your strength is not enough, nor can I grant you enough strength to fight him. We cannot directly interact with the mortal world without stripping ourselves of our power. How can we do this? As he's thinking about it, the children, the Zeus and them may be able. As he's thinking it over, as he's like, as he looks around and like tries to find a familia, as he has kept an eye on that place over there, like he is like more powerful than Zeus and them. As he looked over the whole power for, he looked over an Aurario looking for a familia, from what he understands is what they're called, that would be good for Bel, so that way he can practice his worship of Akatosh of the 8 divines, as well as gain strength and such, is what he looked for. As he came upon Hestia, as he and the other gods remembered Hestia as being one of the nicest gods, but she was always like unlucky in a way. She cared for the humans a lot more than a lot of the other gods do. Like, she didn't see them as inferior or objects to fulfill desires or anything like that. She saw them for what they are, their children. She wasn't like Apollo, which I'm pretty sure or even Ishtar. She was very different in her own right. That's just like, go to the land of Aurario, the city of the exiled gods. As he's like, the exiled gods? As he's speaking to himself, it's like, yes, we told them they were not allowed to share our lands and have people call them gods in our land. We gave them their followers and everything were allowed to follow them to their land as they would make it their own. But we would not permit them here. As they have spoken to Hestia about the tax that they have in Formers, she asked them about, wait, what about her? She would just serve as his goddess for the time being, as it's if you assist Bel, we will allow you to come back to the land. As she says, wait, really? As Tamriel and such is their version of the Holy Land, essentially. As several gods wanted to go back, but Akatosh and them forbade them, in the sense you go there, you die, essentially. As with the permission to return there and to retain her somewhat godly status, even if it's a lower god, for her is a great thing, because nobody here cares about her, really. As she talks about how will I know it's him? He'll come to you in armor made of dragonborn. His hair will be as white as snow, and his eyes as red as ruby. And he will be your first adventurer. As they spoke this, and they immediately disappeared, other gods could feel a strange movement, but they couldn't put their finger on it. As Hestia pretty much eagerly awaited for weeks for Bel to return, or for Bel to appear, as eventually outside one of the gates, he sort of gets an understanding as he's allowed to enter the city. As he's allowed to enter the city, as he makes his way into it, looking for the church as Akatosh had told him to look for. He reaches it, he's like, hello? As she's like, oh, are you, Bel? She's like, I am. You must be Lady Hestia. As he kneels, as he's like, I was informed that you were to be my goddess that you are the goddess of this familia. I am Bel Dovahkiin, and I am to serve in it until I gain enough strength to strike down the Black Dragon King. As she's like, yes. So, as they, speak with one another, gets the whole process underway as he gets the whole thing printed on his back. As there's, like, for his special skills, it's Thoom, shouts, resistance to the cold, can't be charmed or anything, like that sort, like all those special skills. As he's, like, almost immune to, like, anything, like any form of charm magic and such. He can still be hurt by burns and such, but he has a resistance to the cold, enhanced strength, and, like I said, the Thoom. Like, enhanced vitality, strength, all that. It's, like, along the lines of a very weak demigod. If you want to compare him to anything, he's like a low-tier demigod. As with that being said, he talks about his armor and how he needs new weapons. But he has no money. As she's like, couldn't you go into the dungeon and just destroy some monsters, grab some of the pebbles, and then just buy a weapon after? He's like, that could work. As he, like, adjust his armor to seem more like it was supposed to be missing a shoulder piece. So, as he descends into dungeon after... Sorry. Sorry. After getting the whole advice... why do I have hair in my mouth? As he gets the whole... You know, like a pouch and such to store the stuff. As he leaves everything that, like, his food and such inside. Well, he actually carries a bit of food just in case, you know. As he makes his way down, like, as he approaches the thing, a few adventurers are looking at him as they see this quite tall person wearing dragon plate, wearing a weird armor that looks like bones and metal. As he makes his, with no helmet, as they see his pure white hair, long flowing white hair, and his crimson red eyes as he descends into the dungeon. As several hours, like, some people, like, in the upper levels, feel a shaking every little while. As he doesn't really think of it's a good idea to use Fusru Da. So he mainly sticks to, like, Frost Breath, Fire Breath, Slow Time, and for the ones that carry weapons, he uses Disarm, uses Whirlwind Sprint and such, stuff like that. As he even has a few of the other things, like Twister, or whatever it was called, like it sends a cyclone, like throwing things in the air, as he would use his strength as he, like, smashes things to bits with that. As, like I said, he is quite strong. With, like, superhuman... Not superhuman, but he's very strong. Like, for a normal person. At least. As he, like, shouts and such, as he takes the little gems and eventually returns to the not market, but returns to the bank after he gets the explanation that it's to the bank, or the guild hall, or whatever, that he returns these ends for monies. As he, like, stayed in there for, like, well over 12 hours. As when people, like, initially left the dungeon, like, that entire night, he was just like, Fusru Da, Fusru Da, Fusru Da. Well, not Fusru Da, but you get my point. As he just used shouts non-stop. As one night, when Eyes and them were returning from an adventure. And this isn't, like, the whole Minotaur escape thing. As everyone's, like, seeing as is like, hey, bet I can kill more than you. As immediately, like, as they saw, like, several monsters, like, come out of the walls, like, they jumped out, turned to the left, and then they just saw a cyclone of fire eviscerate them. As they see, like, Bell walk forward as he collects the stones. As, like, they, like, are like, what the? As they, like, follow him for a bit, as they see him speak some sort of language, and then just, like, the thing is, like, either destroyed physically, or there's, like, some sort of effect, like fire or something. As he used Soul Tear on one, but it didn't, like, do anything. There's, like, no soul or anything. It just, like, poofed into a thing of air. As he then grabbed this thing, as, like, eventually, the blonde-headed, I forget what he's called. he's not a dwarf, but the, like, guild leader says, hiya. As Belle looks at him, he's like, and Belle's like, hello. It's like, what's your name? Who are you? I'm Belle, child of Hestia. Like, oh, Hestia. I didn't know she had a child. Like, I didn't either, is what Bet says. It's like, as the mage pretty much steps forward, what sort of magical incantation are you using to acquire such thing? He's like, it is a secret art. Nothing more. So he starts to walk away. Hey, as Bet's like, hey, get back here. As he, like, puts a hand on Belle's shoulder. As Belle pretty much grabs his arm and, like, sort of as that, he's like, this guy is matching, like, actually is very much stronger than Belle since he has his, like, boost from being an adventurer. As he starts to overpower Belle, but Belle just says, he uses Mark of Death. As it's like, what the? As he, like, Bet feels weakened as he, like, he's like, what? As then Belle is, like, able to, like, sort of meet him in strength. As it's like, what did you just do? As he says, East, as he, like, speaks it, as Bet then just freezes over as he was encased using ice form. As some, like, the twin Amazon, well, the Amazons pretty much take steps forward as Belle, like, is ready to go, as it's like, hold on, I'm sorry for my friend's thing, but she was only asking a question. If she was meant to learn it, she would have been given it. As then Belle walks away after saying that. As he's like, can you, hang on, before you go, can you unfreeze him? As he's like, yo, using fire breath. As she's like, Yol and Is. As she, like, starts putting time into lessons and, like, seeing if that could cause an incantation. As she's, like, saying, is there, like, a certain way? As she, like, after, like, arriving back at the place, she's standing in the courtyard going, like, ice. Or, like, trying to figure out, like, ice. Or Is. And Yol. As she's trying to cast it, she's like, how did he do that? Is what the elf is wondering. As when Belle got topside, he pretty much just went to the thing, dropped off his coins, got money, went back. As it's like, here, as he, like, handed it to Hestia, she's like, whoa, what's this for? She's like, portion donated to the church, you could say. As he's like, you're allowing me to keep my practices with Akatosh and the Eight, allowing me to worship them in the lower there. She's like, no, it makes sense. Like, as she explains the whole situation that they did, as he's like, Akatosh explained it to me, but thank you. So, as you did not lie, is what he says. Many would probably try to make it out seem that the eight were cruel, but they gave just reasons. As he, like, takes a sip from some water and has some, like, dried beef and such, she's like, you've been here for a while, shouldn't you, like, get some new weapons and such? He's like, my Thum is able to provide everything I need, but you're right, I should probably acquire some weapons. As he stands up, may I please have a portion of the money? As she's like, here's, like, I've been counting it, and this seems like it should get enough to, like, have you get a semi-decent sword, as it's like, it's 11,000 Valis. It should get you a nice weapon. As he's like, thank you, Lady Hestia, as he gives a bow. As he walks off, he's, like, very proper and, like, very respectful, unless he's, like, somewhat provoked, as Bet tried to provoke him. As he arrives, she's like, wait, if you talk to my friend Hephaestus, as she, like, says, she can probably tell you where to get some decent weapons for cheap. Like, where is she? And she's like, oh, I'll show you. She walks him toward Hephaestus's office. As he, like, stands before her, hey, Hephaestus, this is, Belle. My first child. He actually needs a good weapon for cheap. Like, do you know any good stores? As it's like, she's like, I could point you to several. She, like, points out that many of the beginner smiths are here and that you'll be able to get good weapons for cheap. As she explains it. As Belle says, alright. As he sets off looking for a weapon that would, like, suit him. As he's like, how durable? As it's like, oh, it could cut through pure stone. What about my armor? As it's like, well, I'm not sure. It's like, if it can break your armor, if it breaks against your armor, I'll give you two swords for free. As Belle's like, As he raises his arms straight out, as he takes this, like, sword, as he smashes it into it, as the sword shatters, like, breaks in two. As the guy's like, oh! As he like, well, I made a promise. As he hands Belle a giant like a two-handed greatsword, as like, that's like one of my best weapons. As he says, it's made out of a special material gathered from monsters down in the dungeon. It took me months to get the amount of, like, materials to make it. As Belle took his other, like, took the arm, like, handed it to a person, hit my chest, hit my shoulder with it. As the guy swung with all his might, as the sword just clanged against it. As the guy's like, my hands are shaking. As Belle says, it is a good weapon. As he takes it, puts it on his back, and gives the guy the money, he's like, you should be compensated for your work. So he gives Belle, blessings of Hestia upon you. As he, like, remembers, he can't say blessings of Hestia upon you. He can't really say that. He almost said it once before, but he, like, stopped himself. He's like, wait a second. Hestia, sorry. He's like, oh, well, have a nice night. As he would go with his adventurers on killing those things. As throughout that time, like, people hear word of a man who speaks something, and then just, like, something comes out of his mouth and destroys his enemies, sort of thing. As people, like, try to talk with Belle about, like, several magicians and such try to speak with Belle, as they, like, his description has gone around quite well. As he has yet to find something that could prove a challenge to him. As he even went deeper to, like, and as, like, several months later, as he's been in the town, he gets attacked by the Minotaur. As it rushes at him, he tries to use a shout, but before he could, the thing threw something at him, as he's, like, took out his sword and sliced through it. As the Minotaur rushed into him, as it, like, clashed into his horns, as he, like, went sort of, not reeling back, but he was, like, pushed back to the wall. As Belle used this two-handed greatsword, as he's, like, holding it in position to keep the Minotaur in place, as the Minotaur has more strength than him. The Minotaur could do a lot, like, is a very strong creature. So as it has forced him back, he's like, ice! As he uses that shout, as it freezes the Minotaur. As then he goes from the back and says, Fools! As he uses force, unrelenting force, or Fusuda, and sent it flying as it crashed into a wall. As people saw this, as it got back up and just roared again, Belle's like, yo, and just eventually just got fed up dealing with it, as when he went to go cut it into it, it actually hit his shoulder, like into his arm. He's like, ugh. So he went, like, back as he slammed into the wall, as he, like, impaled it. Fighting a Minotaur is not the same thing as fighting a dragon, in the slightest. One may be more dangerous because it flies around, but the other one has its own dangers. As Belle, like has his shoulder, he's like, oh. So he looks at it and, like, wraps it up with bandages. As Eyes comes over, like, are you okay? He's like, I'm good. I'm okay, Miss Eyes. As he reaches down and picks up the big stone, as he puts it in his bag. As he starts to walk away, she's like, wait. My friend is really curious. Can you tell me what it is that you do to make whatever you do work? As he says, it is not something you can learn. You must be born with it. Otherwise, from what I hear, for even myself with an innate talent to learn and master it, it took me years to master even as he makes it sound more epic than it actually is, to like dissuade people of pursuing him any longer. He's like, it took me years to master even a single one of these that I perform. To even make the slightest mistake could cause a very bad reaction, such as having your body thrown back into a wall, your own body scorched or frozen over. You could even rip the own soul from your body. It is the most dangerous kind of magic, without something to have something as sort of a conduit for your magic ability, such as her staff. As he makes, it's like sort of making it up. Like, cause the gods would probably be able to tell, like, something smells fishy here. As well, they may or may not have. But he's just being safe. Like, so he doesn't want his secret to be exposed, that he's, and from an entirely different continent, even though his armor's, like, unlike anyone has ever seen. As people have tried to, like, remake it, but, like, they put it up against stuff that he supposedly survived, such as a sword strike from the same blacksmith, as it, like, cut into the armor. As people are like, is he, like, some sort of holy, like, some great warrior? As everyone's questioning it. As Bell eventually comes up against a horde of fire, like, those giant hands. As he destroys it with fire breath and just cuts through them. As he has very successful hunting missions, you could say. Never encountering anything he couldn't win against. And eventually he meets Lily, as he typically would. He has formed bonds and such with, well, I'll scratch the whole meeting Lily part just yet. As he meets up with, as he's at the hostess fertility, as he is known, as he walks into the thing, everyone takes notice of who it is. It's like, it's a stranger. As they just call him the Bone Warrior, as they all make comments of how his armor and weapons actually look like bone. They call him the Bone Wraith or something along those lines, since he's like pure white, red eyes. You can see why people would probably call him a Wraith. He looks pretty ghostly. As then he sits down and asks for food, water, you know. As he pays up front, he's like, thank you. As he gives a small prayer and then starts eating. As the town eventually returns to a lively chatter. As eventually, like, he gets done and just sits there for a moment thinking, I wonder how things are going back home. I must gather strength to challenge him once more, to destroy the cult before it can become even stronger than it already is. So we get over to the cult, as he, like, Konorik and them are, like, expanding their efforts. And, like, that several months of time, they, like, expanded their efforts to build up the city, cattle, and they're, like, essentially, like, trying to get more children and such. That way, to, like, even if it's, like, through the slave trade and such, they're getting more people so that way they can induct them into the cult. As Bell does what he does. Eventually, the whole Loki familia walks in and has the same talk about the whole, how Bell killed the Minotaur thing. As I'll say that thing was more recent than I actually said it was. As he talks about, I asked him about it, but he says it's more dangerous art than even magic usually is. He says it's very unstable, and that no matter how hard you could train, you could just never even have it, the aptitude for it. As she's like, I guess that's the end of that then. I did dedicate a severe portion of my eternal life, to learning all kinds of magic and to become an adventurer. I guess he just isn't something, I guess he just has something I can't. As with speaking with it and such, eventually, you know, they, like, get on the topic of Bell again. He's like, so, nobody can tell, like, maybe if we could, like, speak with him and talk, maybe if I could get him one-on-one too, like, if we can exchange magic. As they're like, I says, I don't think that will work. I don't know the green elf lady's name, because I don't think it's ever said. I'm pretty sure it is, but I can't. There's a lot of characters you gotta remember the name of, alright? What was her name? Let me dwell on it for a second. Back. Found it. It's like Reveria or some shit. Anyways, if I remember correctly, I was talking about how she was talking about how, like, to acquire, like, if they could trade knowledge of magic and such. As she's just debating this, like, as she's like, wait, he says it's very difficult. Maybe that's why. Maybe. As I don't know her entire personality. I know that she helps Eyes when Eyes was, like, nervous about how to interact with Belle. But, like I said, I'm not entirely sure. I think there's an OVA that I need to watch that may give me a better look at her character. Because I know she is training another wizard, or a wizard apprentice, called Lifa, or something like that. And that's, like, one of the people she's training, or helping with magic. So she thinks maybe that Lifa may have an affinity for this magic. But as she, like, keeps on hearing the requirements, she's like, maybe I may not even, maybe he could only. As she's trying to think of, maybe Lifa would have an easier time learning simple attack spells. As she says, like, his spells seem to be entirely, like, quick attack or quick activation. Nothing special. It's just always a few, like, a very simple, like, few simple words in a language that nobody seems to know. Like, I've looked at languages that look, as she, like holds out a book of, like some of the word, like, in that very few, like, short time she spoke with them, as she wrote down the words, like, in a book, in whatever language. As she says, she scanned for the language, as I'll guess she is pretty smart, as she says she looked through books of several different languages and never found any words that looked like this, or even sounded like this. As she says, there's no matches at all. As with that being said, Belle eventually gets tired and gets up to leave. So he walks out of the thing. As everyone sees him, like, stand up, he's like, thank you for the food. As he gives a bow to Seer and Mamma Mia as he walks out. As Revera's like, hey, can we, as he just, like, is fed up with this, as he goes, whatever the word is to go ethereal, as he does it and just walks through her. And walks through the door. He's like, wait. She's like, wait, what the? As everyone saw him do that, as when she wanted to walk outside the door to yell at him, he's like, used whirlwind sprint to, like, immediately get, like over, like, a few, like, over a dozen yards away. As everyone's, like, looking at him, see walking away, as he's getting kind of irritated, but he's, like, remembering his training not to become too angry, lest he, like, accidentally use a word of power on somebody is, like, a big thing. And to, like, control his will of domination. As Parthenax said that even the dragonborn, like, felt the will to dominate things. As Belle does have somewhat of that need, but he's, like, tempered it, or almost completely annihilated it with that whole, like, filling that with the entire purpose of serving Akatosh. As he, like, never really had any time for, like, domination. He's just been more or less focused serving the gods, or the 8 divines, as he would say. So he eventually arrives at Hestia Place and crashes. And I think that's where I'm going to end this one off at. I hope y'all have enjoyed it. Hope y'all continue to enjoy this. I hope y'all have a nice day, nice night, nice life.